Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the DAOist talk on Celo. I'm Yaz. Nice to meet you all. My talk for today is called The Godfather DAO Celo, and we're going to talk about the community fund on Celo's on-chain protocol. So a little bit about me. I work at Celo, which is focused exclusively on the Celo protocol. I do developer relations, focused a lot on the protocol side. So anything with validator, governance, anything related to the core technology on a layer one solution is I try to do a lot of the work there on the developer relations side. So nice to meet you all. So here's the agenda for today. First, we're going to briefly go over what is Celo. And after that, we're going to talk about what is the on-chain community fund for Celo. And we're going to talk about the different CGP proposals impacting it. CGP stands for Celo Governance Proposal. And then we're going to talk about all the different proposals like the Valor Saving Campaign, the Celo Community Fund, the Community Gift Appreciation, and the Celo Ecosystem Treasury. And finally, we're going to talk about the future of the on-chain community fund. So what is Celo's mission? So Celo's mission, where you have the most mission-aligned people working on Celo, the mission is about building financial system that creates the conditions of prosperity for everyone. And we do that by, like, the feature of Celo as a blockchain is it's a layer one network. It's EVM compatible, so it was a fork of debt from a long time ago. It's a proof of stake EVM network. It has, like, one of the coolest thing about it is, like, the mobile first approach. So we have a really cool phone identity protocol that allows people to activate or tie their phone number to their identity when sending payments. And then we have a really ultralight clients, really good for, like, emerging markets, mobile clients. And finally, Celo on a layer one level has governance. So people on the layer one can submit a governance proposal and have the network vote for it. There's also an on-chain reserve, which is used for the stability mechanism. And finally, we got the community fund, which is the whole talk going to be mostly about the community fund. So yeah, let's talk about the on-chain community fund. So what is the on-chain community fund? So currently, the fund has 8 million Celo. Celo is about, like, let's say it's between $5 and $6. It's about 40 million, USD worth. And there's also 2 million Celo Euro in the on-chain community fund. Celo Euro is one of our stable coins. It's like one of the more recent native stable coins on Celo. So every epoch reward, 25% of that allocation goes to the Celo community fund. So the epoch rewards happen every 24 hours. The rewards go to the validators, stakers, and 25% of that allocation every 24 hours goes to the community fund, which is like a really big amount, right? So far we had 5 governance proposals that have been submitted for utilizing or modifying the community fund. 3 of those proposals have passed. 1 has been withdrawn due to some controversy. The other one is being finalized for submission in the next few weeks, and we're going to talk about all the different ones. We're going to cover all these in detail. The first one was the activation of the community fund. It passed. The appreciation gifts and distribution of CUSD to the holders. One proposal we're going to talk about was, like, reducing the allocation from 25 to 5. It was withdrawn. And finally, we're going to talk about the ecosystem treasury, which, so like an overview, CGP 14, so we talked briefly about phone identity. So one of the wallets worth, per Celo allows you to, if you ever played around with Venmo or Revolut, is similar in the way where you can text money to your friends using only their phone number, assuming they, tied their phone identity to their, wallet. And with this approach, with CGP 14, there was an allocation of 200,000 Celo from the community fund to incentivize more people to save their CUSD. So the more CUSD you save, the more you get reward in Celo. So that was the first proposal. It passed. It's still like going on to this day. If you save using the wallet, you'll get rewards, and it's all coming from the community fund. CZP 17 is they titled that is the first multi-sig that is actually working on the an allocation of the community fund. They call it CCF, so there's an overlap in naming. CCF stands for Celo Community Fund, so there has always been a confusion between which is the first community fund and which is the multi-sig one that came next, right? So this was an allocation of 600,000 Celo. Their main objective has been there's a Celo Foundation grant program, but the grant program is not as fast in issuing grants necessarily due to a lot of submissions. So the CCF's goal using an allocation of the community fund was we can replicate that model much faster in distribution of funds to all the teams the Celo Foundation approves. CGP 20 was done, it was like a 2 or 3 multi-sig by community members. Basically, the whole idea is there was a lot of cool people in Celo, and they wanted to show thanks to those people, and they want to give them a gift of like 100 Celo each. So they allocated 15,000 Celo to a 2 or 3 multi-sig, and that was CGP 20. The most controversial one, CGP 35, reduced the allocation of the community fund from 25% to 5%. Their main reason for that was we went over, right now it's roughly 8 million Celo in the reserve, in the community fund. A lot of that is untouched money, like it's not being distributed, the capital is not being allocated where it needs to be. And their argument was, the proposals, by reducing the amount, we can distribute it better elsewhere. But it received a lot of pushback from the community because Celo is like over 1 year old and it didn't get the opportunity it needed to actually distribute that fund. So after a bit of back and forth, community calls and stuff, the proposal was withdrawn in the hopes that there will be more proposals to come to, allocate some of that fund. Finally, CGP 38, Celo Ecosystem Treasury. So I'm one of the proposals of this proposal. Just a heads up, we're a 5 of 9 multi-sig system. The whole idea of the ecosystem treasury is to aggressively distribute money where it's needed, especially in emerging markets. And one of the models that we're really interested in is a DAO of DAOs model, especially for emerging markets. And we'll cover that really briefly in a bit. It addresses the concern of CGP 35, which was, reducing the community fund from 25 to 5 because there's not enough capital allocation. The Treasury tries to focus on 4 different tiers: emerging markets, research and development, radical experimentation, and supporting the Celo crypto community. So DAOs from the Treasury. So the whole idea here is creating opportunities in emerging markets using Web3 tooling, right? So there are 3 target countries that the Treasury wants to focus on. The most important one currently is the Brazil DAO. So the team right now, me and the rest of the people on the multi-sig, we're trying to work with folks in Brazil. We have a lot of good contacts in terms of creating a DAO specifically for Brazil and allocating like between 300 to 500 thousand USD to be folks local on the ground that who have a reputation in Brazil from the Web3 community to start voting on the best use of those funds within Brazil in terms of allocation of the money. So Brazil right now is the biggest market right now in Celo in terms of how many folks are really interested in payments. So we're very excited specifically about Brazil DAO in terms of like activating one of the most important emerging markets that we're seeing. And then because it's really focused on emerging markets, we identified 2 other countries in different continents that we also want to activate. Nigeria, that was one a really important one. We have folks on the ground, because we work exclusively with emerging markets, people in Lagos and elsewhere where we want to, help out and, allow them to determine their own governance. And one of the key things here that is really important to highlight is we want governance on these DAOs to be done in their own local languages rather than in English, because there's a huge gap in terms of folks who know English, but they understand Web3 to some degree. They like to mess with that technology and stuff. So for me, at least, and for a lot of other people, for example, for the Brazil DAO, having it in Portuguese is super important. The Treasury would be able to help out, guide, but the best part about that kind of governance, if it's done in Portuguese, as an example, it's great because it impacts people within Brazil, not necessarily the larger ecosystem. And we're also doing that model for the Philippines. Philippines is another huge market for us in Asia, and with the rise of Axie Infinity, Philippines is an important sector. The whole idea is, the mandate is, focus either on payment solution that either utilize Celo for the emerging markets or improving, Web3 development tools, creating the conditions for developers to, prosper and, to grow and stuff. One of the biggest challenges, if you really want to target emerging markets, is a lot of people I want to invest in emerging market entrepreneurs, right? But the funnel to get an entrepreneur from an emerging market who, coming to your, accelerator is really small because, you're assuming that everyone speaks English in emerging markets and everyone has a laptop and everyone knows programming and everyone knows Solidity. And then on top of that, they're building a DApp and they're creating a startup. So that funnel, that filter is really tiny. And one of the interests using those DAO model is we want to create the condition that allow more people to be interested in developing on Web3 in emerging markets and hopefully create a startup out of it. Let's talk a little bit about the future. So one of the things we really want to do is, with the Celo on-chain fund is we want to encourage more community members to make proposals for the community fund. So if any of you are interested in Celo and you want to talk more about, ideas and proposals using the community fund, definitely reach out. We're always interested in learning more proposals. We want to encourage more DAOs to manage their allocations of the community funds. So if there's a specific DAO for a specific, doesn't have to be like a country DAO, it can be in, any kind of target DAO. We'd love to help out. And finally, we want to explore different, governance tools that around, supporting the community fund. So any kind of tooling that really improve the, the experience for people is something that we're really interested in. And here's my Twitter, my email. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions and stuff. And thank you for your time. I don't know if there's any Q&A, but if not, you can find me later. I'm around. All right, thank you.